Ladies and gentlemen, we have two presentations in this session, and I'm introduce Mr. Alexey Ignatenko. This presentation, conflict control of spreading processes on networks.
Thank you. Good morning for everyone. And I want to present this presentation, and I just want to note that this is not regular paper, it's a short abstract, so it's ongoing work, and I will try to explain a problem statement, some state of art. Please, next slide. And this is the plan of this presentation. So I will try to talk about state of art in these epidemic models, and then about extension to network epidemic models, some approximation techniques which are actually implemented in current research field, and simulation that we built to analyze rather simple networks, and then about a future perspective of applying optimal control theory and complete control or game theory, and some conclusion at the end. So yeah, next slide. It's too fast. Yeah. So first epidemic models goes as far as Bernoulli, and I think it's Johann Bernoulli, and it's 18th century, and he analyzed the smallpox epidemic, and he tried to model it with mathematical equations, and he finally got a SI model, and then later SIR model, and so on. I will explain what this means. And oh yes, thank you. Much better. After that, there was a bunch of different models. As far as I think, a couple of thousand epidemic models, which model some subtle elements or parts of this epidemic process. But recently, there was a huge interest again to this field of study because of network concept. Because networks is everywhere, and it is interesting that these models prove to be useful in modeling of network viruses, social media rumors, and spreading of fake news. So I will tell about that. And the most interesting, of course, is how can we manage with that, how we can control this process, and how we can achieve better results in slow down, for example, or preventing some nodes from infection. So this is the simplest possible epidemic model called SI model. I think it's familiar for most of us. And here we have a population of individuals, and there are two possible states. Individuals can be infected or susceptible to infection. And when infected individual meets susceptible individuals, there is some probability of infection, which described here in constant beta. So beta is the probability of infection after meeting, and this meeting is proportional to number of susceptible and number of infected individuals. So basically there are two equations, but this is the one equation because we have also that x plus s equal to 1. So we have this infection process to the right, and it's a famous logistic equation or logistic curve. It's a little bit more complicated model where we have a third state. It's resistible recovered individuals which got immune to future further infection. So we have, at the start, we have 100% is susceptible, then some of them are infected, and some of them are recovered from infection, and this is a green line. They never been infected again. So there are three equations, and also normalizing us plus x plus r are equal to 1. And here we have beta and gamma. Gamma is the recovery rate. And depending on gamma, beta, there is interesting dynamic also possible, not just this simple one. So two assumptions on which the standard model grounds is a full mixing of population. So every individual have equal chance to meet any other individual. Of course, in reality, it's not true. And the constant infection rate, right here, infection rate it doesn't depend on people's behavior, doesn't depend on their neighborhood, and so on. So these two assumptions is about to be relaxed in current study. And when we consider a network model, of course, nodes are individuals, and links or edges is a connections between them. So network model models our interaction in real life or in social network, and infection can be proceed only when these two individuals connected, one infected and one susceptible. And the rate can be dependent on age or node type. This is important note, I think. So if you want to define network structure, network model of infection, we need to define network structure, which obviously will affect our spreading. Initial infection, which node are infected. Rules of transition, because depending on application of study, this can be constant spreading of infection or one chance spreading of infection. For example, if you got infected mail, you have one chance to open it, and if you don't open it, then you don't infect. And how to apply controls on this model. Some challenges. It's obviously that different networks will produce different dynamics depending on this structure, and actually network structures can be very different. Networks are not uniform, of course, in general, and right now, because of all these topics, it's simpler just to simulate the spreading process if you want to know something about particular network than to build some theoretical theorems. And of course, control problem is how to define objective and quality, and how we estimate the results. So two main approaches right now. It's some approaches analyze late time properties of this process, and some of them time dependent properties. Late time properties, it's the properties when infection is stabilized. So it's like actually it doesn't depend on time. And time dependent is properties which actually goes through the time, and we need to calculate it for every moment of time. And of course, there is also some approximation approaches to this problem, and the three of them, I think the most popular. First one is the configuration model. When we have some particular network, we can generalize infection rate or probability over this network. So here we also have constant beta, but this constant beta will depend on network structure. Second is pairwise approximation, where we use conditional probability along the links of our network model, and usually we have like two degree approximation, and then we drop out other members of this sequence, and nice results which are actually have a good comparison with practice. And degree-based approximation is a heuristic, which is quite interesting. We assume that probability is the same for nodes with the same degree. So if some person have only one friend, then all person who has only one friend will have the same infection rate. If some person have only two friends, so all them will have the same betas. It's also, of course, simplification, but it works very well for some kinds of networks. So our idea how to simulate this process we use R language or R system. It's a system for visualizing and data science working, and there are some packages which are useful, and this is, if you're not familiar, this is main window of this R system, and we developed some application available for testing. The links are in the paper. You can find them at the end in references, and you can actually launch your own simulation and see how network is affected. But it's very time-consuming if you have a network bigger than like 20 nodes. So because it's a preliminary model. So what's the idea? How we build this simulation? We generate all adjacency matrices which describe network structure for this one component and n nodes. We consider only one component network because if you have two components and one component is affected and other is not, then it's obvious that second component will never be affected because there are no links. So we only consider networks with the property of connectivity. And then we remove all isomorphic networks, choose infected node, and launch a size spreading process. So as you see, this is a number of different graphs of n node with property of connectivity and with removing of isomorphic graph, and this grows very fast actually. So if you have only 18 nodes, you already have a very big number. And this is an example for some 7 node networks, which is the result of generating of this program. So we have different setups, and for each setup we can launch the simulation. And as you see, this is a simple SI model. As you see, simulation can be very different depending on starting node. And I will tell about simulation a little bit at the end, but now I want to tell about control. So when we talk about control of this model, the control actually really depends on application field. So if you have SIS model where recovered individual after infection are again susceptible for infection, then we can, for example, control recovery rate, give them better medicine so they recover faster after infection. And here it's non-linear system with this number. And if you have a SI model, maybe we have protection effort to protect some nodes of further infection, and here this is a different system. So control setup arises naturally from application, from the problem. And there is objective to be optimized. Usually it's cost or time or both. And the recent idea is to apply optimal control theory for this field of study, and it proves to be very useful because it allows to solve, to give solutions for many epidemic problems and controlling them. And interesting that solution often is a bank control. Bank control, it's when you have all your resources spent at the beginning, for example, and then at some point you just use all your resources and switch to zero, and you don't use any resources at all. And this is a bank control. It's a first-order discontinuous function, and it's a quite obvious idea. If you have some infection, then if you have some limited resources, limited budget, you better spend all your resources at the beginning of the epidemic, and then you slow down at the most for the most time. And but not all system here have bank control. And this is an example how we can delay. For example, it's a SI model with a very simple control setup. Just for example how it looks. We can't control by negative numbers. We have control on the 0 and some effort to slow down epidemic. So it's a difference with mechanic system where we can go to the right or to the left as we go. And another interesting development is using conflict control theory or game theory, which are synonyms right here. And they deal with the uncertainty and action of nodes. Because if you have infection, some people change their behavior. They start wearing masks. They avoid big concentration of people. So they change their infection rate. And if you have big networks, this is actually some decentralized system where a network defending itself of this epidemic infection process just by using some rules for every node locally. So, and also we can deal with a situation where we have some third party which is interested to damage our network at the most scale. For example, like in computer viruses launch when we have some hacker and he wants to disrupt all network as soon as possible, as fast as possible. And additional, so maybe in line, it's a fluid models. Fluid models are actually very useful for modeling computer networks when you have a flow of packets flowing from node, from server to computer and so on. So we have this differential equation model, but some clarification, what is the fluid here? Is the probability of infection or something else? Okay. It needs to be clarified. So, and it's a preliminary work, so if we will succeed with building this model, we can use also first direct contrarians method, which allow us to define conditions for existence of solution and when we can actually stop a bit infection and when we can only slow down. So, and the last, it's some simulation of very simple 7-node network with different starting infection point. We have, you see, it's the first nodes, the fourth node, 7th, and 6th. As you see, the same as go into one of these classes, only 4 classes possible of infection spread. And here we have 2 very close dynamic, which is, I think, interesting. So we don't need to calculate every possible infection beginning of network if we have some technique to classify it. And I think it's finding of this work, well, maybe hypothesis, it is possible to make relaxation of computation. If we are interested in infection time, then the shortest path between the most distant node or to infected node is important. We can skip other calculation, and for control it is important to apply it in bottlenecks of the shortest path to protected node. So in this manner we can achieve the best possible results. So this is a ongoing work, quite challenging topic because current networks has 1,000 and maybe 10,000 nodes, and there are computation, theoretic, and network approximation problems. And this is the idea of conflict control and fluid model, which I think will be useful. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Questions, please. I have a question.
I'm so a little bit concerned about the scalability of this approach. You showed that it should degrade quite quickly because for a network with 18 nodes, the number of different combinations is quite substantial. Have you any idea of the scalability up to a certain number of network nodes?
Right now, no.
I mean, practically interesting number, hundreds of nodes. Would that method you demonstrated in simulation work for several hundred nodes in current settings with the current software?
Well, I launched some approximation methods.
Okay.
Approximation methods for, I think, a couple of hundred nodes. In my notebook, it works for, I think, 6 hours or something. But it's, of course, there is a need to use supercomputers and cloud and cluster. It's inevitable, and it's inevitable in big network modeling to use supercomputers. So we're working on algorithms, and then we will try to parallel and efficiently use it.
You mentioned the complexity would be very seriously reduced if you concentrate on the shortest paths and bottlenecks.
Yeah, that's the idea, but I don't.
So you didn't yet try that, right?
Yeah.
It would be nice to see the comparison in times taken to accomplish.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
More questions? Please tell me, are your results dependent on topology of graphs?
Yeah, of course. It's very. That's why it's interesting, because if you have some number of nodes, you can create very different topologies, and some topologies would be more resilient, and some topologies would be weaker for infection. For example, if we consider this topologies here, then the star topology is probably the weakest for the infection, because the infection time would be the shortest from all possible. Yeah, and if you have a network with link where all nodes link to only one or two nodes, it's like line. Yeah, this topology probably would be the most resilient for infection, because this maximum time would be minimal, and minimal time would be not worse than other.
Did you try to simulate this situation that we have small word topology?
This what?
Small word.
Small word. No, sorry, no. I just tried to generate all possible topologies. Yeah, and maybe, yeah, it's interesting topology, of course, and there are a bunch of special topologies which need to be examined, and maybe with bigger efforts.
Just to elaborate a little bit on the topological aspects, the graphs were so undirected. What about directed graphs? Are there any differences?
I think it depends on application, because if you have a real infection spread between people, it doesn't matter directly. When you meet somebody, you have a chance from infection. If you meet an infected person, if you meet an uninfected person, then it doesn't matter also. But if you have...
it's about networks and firewalls, which may allow spreading infection in one direction.
Yeah. In social networks, for example, also the rumors and fake news, direction is actually important, but as you see, undirected graphs is much have many complexity here. Directed will have much more.
Yeah, I have to build bigger matrices. Yeah, that's true. And one question: one of the graphs here, the bottom right one has a cycle, and top right one has a cycle. Has it complicated the solution? I mean, the cycles in the graphs, do they complicate the situation?
Well, the most important is not cycles, but a bunch of clusters of highly connected nodes. If you have a cluster of highly connected nodes, then this cluster will be infected in very short time. So this is what it is.
Can I have a question? Your paper mentioned conflict control. I did not understand what is conflict control. You just investigate the infection spreading. Where is the conflict control?
I mentioned that there are two possible setups for... first of all, conflict control, it's a name of game theory, but by Soviet school of control. So because I belong to this contrarian school or something, then I use the conflict control, but here it's the same as game theory, so just for simplicity. And I said that there are two possible setups of using conflict control. First, when we have nodes, when we will assume that nodes have behavior and they change their infection rates depending on situation. So if infection starts, some nodes will cut some of their links, for example. And in this situation, we have complex system with self-behavior, and we need conflict control theory to understand how it will go. And the second, if we have intruder or hacker which tries to launch, so he tries to find spots where he can infect our network in the shortest time. And we try to counteract it. So this is another step.
We have another question. Thank you. The next presentation is collecting the seminal scientific abstracts with topic modeling, snowball sampling, and citation analysis by Gennady Dobrovolsky and Vitaly Kupernik.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gennady Dobrovolsky. I am the PhD student of Computer Department of Computer Science of the Zaporozhye National University. My scientific advisor is Natalia Kupernik, and we will present to you our study on collecting seminal papers of some subject. The plan of presentation is following. First I tell you why we decided to start our study and why we don't and why we are not satisfied with the existing method. Next I talk about background, definition and method, and describe all technology. And last step is highlight of some experiments we performed to estimate our method. So when we start some new study, some new investigation, we need to read all the paper to get familiar with state of the art in some domain. When you are new to domain, you cannot select right papers. You need to read all of them, and it takes a long time. So we need some tool to collect papers, to prove that the collected set of papers are full, and some measure to decide which papers are important and which papers are not important. And all the tasks are too difficult for students, difficult for people who enter new domain. So we start with seeking for existing tools. On the left, I listed well-known keyword search tools and review papers, but all of them are suffer from biased vocabulary because all reviewers, all authors used their own terms to describe the results, and I cannot be sure that I use the same terms. So when I search for keywords, I cannot fit all papers if they use different patterns. So more intelligent techniques still is not satisfactory because authors is not directly mapped to scientific domain. Exploratory research cannot provide some measure to show importance of paper. And ontology, we cannot be sure that we can find ontology for our small subject. And the most promising approach is citation network. What is the citation network? Is when each author writes his scientific publication, he or she selects some references. I hope all would at carefully selected publication in references. And all the scientific search engines can follow publications, so we can provide some software to collect, to go along these references. And at first, and we have very early investigation price, and other shows that when we regard citation networks, we can reach from any publication to any other publication. It's a very small number of steps. It is called small dot network. When you don't hear small dot steps, you of course can hear a theory of 6 handshakes. It is the same. How we collect? Using how we collect the citation networks. The common method is the snowball sample. When we start from some seed paper on the left, then we can find all papers with references. And for each papers we found following by references, we follow the reference. Next level references, and the number of publications grow very fast in exponential. So we need to wait to keep our sample much smaller to get managed it. So we suggest a way to neglect some publication and keep another publication. It is some kind of greedy algorithm, and we hope that we still remain in framework or small option, but we need to prove this hypothesis. What is the way to decide if keep paper in snowball or get rid of it? We suggest to use the probabilistic topic modeling. It is very specific modeling because we have a set of short text, and common like directly latent allocation modeling, it don't work. So we need to employ something other. We collect short text, we get probabilities with covariances, and get a square matrix of joint probabilities, and then we build probabilistic topic model based on all the collection. Why and how we built it? We suggest to use sparse symmetric non-negative matrix factorization. Our result is sparsity regularization. It allows to determine number of topics in natural way. We can set some large number of topics, but at finish we have only much smaller number, and probabilities of other topics are 0, so we can get rid of them and keep only meaningful. And workflow is very common. First we get scientific abstract and title, then we do some natural language processing to finish in counting word covariances. Then we need to estimate which publication is important and which not. In the restricted snowball sampling, we collected just some network. Then we started for counting the path. from left is the most AD is some source models, which is most recent publication. And the right side of our network is the latest publication. This simply counts paths from left to right, and some nodes, for instance, F nodes, have two paths through it. So we can conclude that node F is important and is more important than other nodes. This is our measure of importance of scientific value of the paper. So, general logic of our technology. First, we run a common snowball to provide topic modeling for background estimation. Then we create topic model, then we do restricted snowball, keep it only most simple. The publication which are most similar to our seed publication. Seed papers is the set we collected with manual search. We cannot be sure that we collected all, but we can get any papers which seems to be in our domain. And after we run restricted snowball, we can prove later that the resulting corpora don't depend on our starting points. And starting from any papers, we can collect a full set of same abstracts. And the last step is search path count, which allow us to detect most significant, most seminal publication. Now about experiments. We need to check some assumption we made at start of designing our technology first. If we can use probabilistic topic model and if we can really determine number of topics in natural way, then we need to check if our restricted snowball sampling can collect all the papers, and we can determine at which point we should stop sampling. That if we can detect saturation or not. Next, we need to check if collected citation network is still small network, and suggest the software package to do all the things I listed. We do experiments into the data sets. First, we download high energy physics abstract from those alarms laboratory, because each abstract is attributed with keywords and it has own topic. We can apply this dataset to estimate the quality of our probabilistic topic model. And next, we run our method to collect our data and test it. First to start, we need collectors seed papers, our starting point, and the best starting point, the best is result. Then we grade our probabilistic topic model on the energy physics abstract. And we can see that keywords based closeness similarity is correlated with Pickian divergence. For instance, on left top is that means that similarity is 0 and distance is maximal. And the right bottom means that similarity is 1 and distance is 0. how the sparsity can help us to show number of topics. The red line is baseline when we don't employ regularization, and green and blue lines show that after some number of topics, the probability drops to 0, and we can suggest that for green lines, the number of topics is 126, and for blue line, the number of topics is 150. Because we start at different papers, we can slightly different number of topics. Next, the optimal age of seed papers. We draw number of citation age, and we can see that the number of citation is maximal about 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Next is separation. We estimate the probability that we detect some important papers after a long time. On the plot we see that after about 30,000, probability of detecting new papers is very small, so we can stop at this point our segment, and we can be sure that with a probability 5%, we can not find new papers. So saturation is reality. Next, we can estimate our topic model against the existing set of publication. And we can see that on left side is less relevant, and the right side is most relevant. You can see list of papers, and we can be sure that our model is correct. Next, about robustness. When we start from different number for different set of seed papers, we can be sure that in 66% we found all the papers. But when we run several times, we can find all papers. Next, we check if our network is instead scale-free. The plot shows that the green distribution has a value, which is one of feature of scale of small dot network. That's the main result. We created software package that performs step by step all the workflow, and at finish we have a list of seminal papers which can be varied. When we keep more top search paths, we can get long list. But minimal reading plan we present for some search on automatic pronunciation assessment. And intermediate results are presented here. We developed method of sparse regularization, non-negative matrix factorization. We apply principal component approximation. We develop restricted snowball sampling, and we implement search path algorithm in Python to automatically measure the levels of scientific publication. And it is very interesting it is very interesting to apply some known method of data extraction to our data, and to get some terms on different scientific domains, and to evaluate the quality of jumps and quality of our data. These questions I managed.
These questions.
Thanks for that presentation. I'm wondering, how do you compute your citation frequency in your approach?
We don't compute citation frequency. We use the citation path count instead of citation frequency.
Could you please show the slide? F refers, I mean, the note in this graph refers to publication, right? All the nodes are publications, and the edges are the citations in the other publications, right? Okay. So, why not try to cross-evaluate your citation frequency search using these graphs by just grabbing the number of citations from the resources like Google Scholar or Microsoft Academic Search or whatever, and compare the results. Would that be interesting or possible?
I have compared the citation counted by Google on Microsoft Academic and
your count. And what is the result of this comparison?
The result is that when we count citation number from Google Scholar, we still keep some references from papers which are not belong to our subject.
To your small world.
To our small world, and we cannot be sure that citation is not.
But those extra citations just highlight that the paper is seminal, isn't it?
But we try to follow some mainstream of ideas evolution, but we cannot. But when
I do fear that just locking you're inside the small world may be not very rational. If there is some evidence from the outside of the small world that the paper is really seminal, why not exploiting this evidence? I mean, this external evidence from the outside of the small world.
this is because if we give also references, we have some gaps in citation efforts. It is publication to reference by everyone. For instance, if I search for references for probabilistic topic model, I have one paper, latent derivative allocation, which is referenced by everyone. It is very important, of course, but when we follow all the references,
So you mean that sometimes in your small world the paper is not that important as it is outside the small world? Okay, it's a discussion, and I would not like to penalize a lot of questions. Thank you.
No question. Thank you. I'm going to introduce presentation optimization of parallel software tuning with statistical modeling and machine learning. Pablo Ivanenko.
Software auditing can be improved with the use of statistical modeling and machine learning. To my regret, my colleague Novak couldn't make it to the conference. To my regret, Novak couldn't make it to the conference, and he was working on the modeling part, so my talk will be mostly about autotuning, the framework that was used for it, and the main problem that was addressed in this work, problem of autotuning. Okay. So, some initial information about software automated tuning. Well, the name, I said, is quite self-descriptive, but so what does it mean? Software is the object of optimization. So when you want to make your program make faster, you may want to try and adapt different variations. May want to try different variants in target environment. So, automated. Automated means that whole this cycle should be automated, and it's kind of obvious because it takes a lot of time, and usually it's a matter of at least hours, maybe days. So human work should be minimized in this. How generic cycle of tuning is performed? You have some software. Let's say you have some program to calculate some weather forecast, and you know that your program will be executed frequently in some environment. So you may want to optimize it to find the best configuration of this program for this specific environment, and then your program will be executing faster and consume less time. But you still have to spend time on this initial optimization. So you have your program, you is able to do some modification, you benchmark it. Benchmark is an important point. Autotuning doesn't model anything. It uses practical, empirical experiment to evaluate performance and the quality of results. So we have a program, we execute it, we look how many time it took, and we check that that result is precise, because sometimes you may spend less time in computation, but the result would be not so precise as you want. You make modification, you benchmarked this version of the program, you checked that everything is okay, or all possible variations are evaluated, and you have some optimized version. This number of cycles usually is quite big, thousands of thousands. For some problems it may be millions. And the idea of plugging in statistical model and machine learning is generally to reduce this number of iterations. I will talk about it a little bit later. Okay. One small note. Over, let's say, last 50 years, the amount of memory and its price reduced significantly. So when we were talking about making your programs fast, like in 80s, mostly people were considered about reducing its computational complexity. So reduce the asymptotic complexity of your algorithm. Now memory is comparatively cheap. It's quite big, and the thing is that you may use slower algorithm that requires bigger computational complexity, but it will use different memory layers. I'm talking about CPU caches versus random access memory. And your slower program from the computational point of view may outperform the better algorithm. I'll have example later. So move to another slide. Why in our work we are focusing on parallel software? Because when your program is parallel, you need to distribute data somehow, collect the results, and be sure that you don't spend much time for this merge and split operations, so you have benefit from using multiple nodes or etc. So when your program is being paralleled, you have additional layer of configuration that can be picked and tuned. And about two main problems. First problem is you have to write tuner for your software. Software is the program that you want to optimize. Tuner is another program that will perform this tuning. In my work, I created a small framework that generates most of code and most of work for this purpose automatically. So it just looks at the source code of your program you want to optimize. It requires the developer to add some metadata. I will show the example later. But the idea is that you do not change your program, you simply add metadata, and the framework automatically generates all possible defined variants and procs them. So the second and the main problem is that if your program is something non-trivial, auto-tuning is very time-consuming. So let's say you have a program that runs for 1 minute, and each variation you want to probe it several times, like let's say 5 times. So each variation of your program to estimate it requires 5 minutes. So you can say that you can estimate something about 300 configuration per day. So it's a lot of time, and there are different strategies to fight this, but the common idea is that search space of possible program variants should be reduced. It can be reduced by some optimization of search algorithms, but again, they may start in some local optimum, and its result heavily depends on starting point. So the more modern approach would be to try to plug in statistical analysis and machine learning. The proposal was to improve auto-tuning, and for this work we did the following. We had a demo program. The demo program is demo program was about hybrid parallel sorting algorithm, and we just gathered the data from all launches. It took a couple days, and then we picked data analysis and checked whether it's possible to significantly reduce this search space by machine learning. So if you look at the workflow of the optimization, there is this section, empirical evaluation. So it's about taking your program, taking some input data and executing it to get performance results. So the idea was that for some subset of probing configurations, this evaluation can be replaced with the estimate from trained model. So obviously you have to train your model, so you will have to execute some to prove some configuration to get training data, but results show that anyway you can for demo program you can reduce the search space twice with the usage of statistical model. It's a general information what terminology. So search space in our case is a possible combination of program parameters. We have training data, and once training is completed, we just replace the evaluation from the result by the evaluation from this statistical program. And some small example. Parallel sorting algorithm. The idea was not to implement the best performing algorithm, but to have some well-known example with multiple parameters to tune. So I took parallel merge sort. On the high level, there was a parameter number of threads, this variable. And the hint for autotuner framework is this comment. So what does it say? It says that it should probe all program variants with parallelism values from 2 to 20, and the set should be 2. And 2 more parameters. One is to when to switch from sorting your sub array on different threads to sorting them within one. Third thread is this one. And the second one is when to switch from merge sort to insertion sort. It's a common hack. So when you have a small chunk of data, small chunk of numbers, and they completely fit in your L1 cache sync processor, you can use insertion sort, despite it's slower than merge sort, but it doesn't require additional memory, and it will perform significantly better because it won't use random access memory at all, and it's faster. Experiment setup. So set of 20 million random integers were sorted. We had 3 parameters, and computation was performed on a small notebook, 4 cores, 60 devices, random memory. Quite 8 megabytes of cache, so insertion sort definitely should work. And the experiment was split into phases. As I said, in the first phase, we executed all possible program variations, and it took a couple of days. And in the second phase, statistical modeling was put into just to get the idea whether it's possible to prune this search space. Just shows numbers that show what is the difference between different versions. So the slowest execution took almost 4.5 seconds to sort 20 integers with some bad configuration. Optimal, the best one was less than 1 second, and third configuration is just to show that it was filled from intuition and just to show what difference is between, in this case, between intuitive configuration for quite simple task program and the actual optimal. So isolate difference matters. About the second phase, it's a short information. If you are interested about what more information about machine learning, part of this experiment, please refer to the full text of the paper in cross proceedings. But the short information is the following. So, second primary analysis was with Python and Scikit library, then R was used. So, machine learning model was multi-layer perceptron. Function was little used, and since I'm not the expert in this area, I propose just to switch to the result that we received from this experiment. So, with this hybrid approach, with using machine learning, we were able to reduce search space twice. But it was the case when we had all data before the analysis. So the next work would be, further work would be just to make more real-world experiment where when the machine learning model tries the tuning cycle. So when we do not have whole data related at the beginning, and we need to really execute tuner only for those configurations that we want to probe. And this chart shows the ratio of sample data that we need for training to get quite good model prediction accuracy. So it appears that for this specific experiment problem, we needed only 30% of data to get the model quite accurate. And the conclusion, well, approach is promising, but obviously it will require a lot of work to somehow generalize this approach, because for each algorithm you want to optimize, the model may be quite different. So there is still a lot of work to make this more formal and to automate all the stuff. Thanks.
Thank you.
Question, please.
I saw that you test your approach using only 3 parameters. Yes? You test your approach on using only 3 parameters.
Yeah, because the parallel sorting algorithm is quite simple, and there are only 3 parameters. We are experimenting with other tasks like weather modeling, and number of parameters is bigger than, but it's a complex problem to present.
You tested your algorithm on much bigger number of parameters, and it behaves like you showed on simple example.
Well, the recent experiment with weather forecasting showed that search space, it wasn't produced so heavily. If I'm not mistaken, it was not 50%, but something about only 30%.
I know that we perform discrete optimization on large number of parameters. It takes much more time than small number. How more time do you need to optimize?
Large numbers, you mean parameter values, or the size of set of possible values?
Do you estimate the time of optimization for small number and large number and very large number of tuning parameters?
Yeah. I think I get it. We haven't estimated it for more than 6 parameters. We haven't tried it, but definitely if you have dozens of parameters and they all are dependent, your model will be more complex, and yeah, it's easier to work with a smaller number of parameters.
More questions?
I'm curious about your immediate plans for future work. What do you plan to do in the short term?
In short term, well, there is one idea. So the main power of auto-tuning is that you have a single program, single tuner, and it can optimize your program for any environment. So it may be your notebook, it may be some more powerful machine. So you may exploit data from tuning cycles of the same program on some similar platform when you want to optimize for another. Let's say you have 2 nodes, they both have 4 cores, but they are slightly different in characteristics like clock rate. But you have your program tuned for node A, and you want to tune it for node B. So if you have evaluation history from node A and the CPU are similar but not exactly similar, so you may use the data from environment A to reduce number of real launches and to use it as a training set.
Okay.
So the idea was to try to introduce this concept of similar environments and check if it will help, if it will work.
Just to elaborate a little bit, to plan to experiment on practically interesting parallel configurations like FPGA clusters having more nodes than 4.
Well, currently we are experimenting on many core platforms, so it's not clusters. Simplified, it's architecture when you have something about 100 cores on a single chip. Yeah, so at the moment we are experimenting with this environment.
Thank you.
More questions? Thank you. So we complete our session. Coffee break. Thank you.
Hello all. We begin last session, ICT education, and now we have two reports. First report, ICT using in integrated teaching management core courses in a foreign language. Authors Olga Yudina, Irina Shapun, Yana Dubchinska, and Lyudmila Bakharina. Bakharina, sorry. From Zaporizhzhia National University. Speaker Yana Dubchinska. Please.
Dear colleagues, I was already introduced. My name is Yana Dubchinska and I work at Zaporizhzhia National University, Faculty of Management. So I want to talk today not from the point of view of the developers of new technologies and new software, but from the point of view of the user of these technologies. Could you please switch to... Being a professor at the university, we consider the ITC environment as the complex of electronic methods of teaching and communicating, the usage of which allows performing the gradual learning activities that builds both professional and foreign language competence. So our today's conference, this conference shows that really it's very important to have a foreign language competence, and we, being a regional university, understand how important it is to show our students the necessity of knowing foreign language. So the object of our study is the process of integrated teaching professional subjects in English using ICT technologies. The subject is the technology of integrated building of professional and foreign language communicative competence using ICT. And the aim of the research was to see how effective the using of information and communication technology was in the integrated teaching of two courses. The first was the course of corporate social responsibility, and it was taught in English. It was quite an experiment for our university. And the second, the supported course, was English for professional processes. During this process of integrated teaching, we implemented modern information and communication technologies, which can be divided into several categories. Information education technologies, and you can see some of them that are enumerated here. The internet-oriented teaching technologies, of course, activity-oriented technologies that was already then to have been used for many years. Case technology and the foreign language integrated learning technologies. The communicative opportunities that we used during these courses, during our experiment, are the following. We tried to integrate both synchronous communication using Skype, Viber, and asynchronous communication through email and different messages. And besides, of course, multimedia technologies, because this was basically the basis of lecturing of the post-corporate social responsibility. The model of integrated teaching, as I have already mentioned, includes two courses. social responsibility and credits for English for professional purposes. During our experiment, we developed the model and we came to the conclusion that we can use actually two variants in order to have some material to compare to work with. We can use two variants. This is variant 1, which included most of the communicative technologies in the curriculum. You can see all of the enumerated for corporate social responsibility included electronic manual that we have developed within our experiment, and English for professional purposes, which includes almost all of the communication technologies. This is variant A, and variant B, which included less communicative technologies, so we have some variables to compare with. So this was the variable of our experiment. In variables of the experiment are the group compositions, number of participants. There were 13 students in each group, and their knowledge level was. Program content and study material was the same. The content of the control tasks before and after the experiment were also the same in all 4 groups, and time and duration of the experiment were also invariable. The experiment was held in the 3rd semester of 2 consecutive academic years, so it was 2016-2017 and 2017-2018. The total number of the students that took part in this experiment was 52, and we hold the questionnaire with the open-ended questions, asking the students how do they think, how would they benefit from using the ICT technologies. And we prioritized all the answers. They are as following. The first one was building the professional independence. Then comes wider opportunities to successfully finish the course, because the course was pretty flexible in all the tasks, including the current control. Academic mobility, knowledge acquisition, adaptation for new forms of activity. Actually, adaptation for new forms of activity was much more important for the professors that were included in the experiment, not for the students. They adapted pretty fast. And changing of communication mode between the subjects of the process. So we used the design of the courses, of both courses was the same. It was section 1, which was pretty much traditional, introduction to preliminary acquaintance, which allowed us to get the students acquainted with the test, with the course, and also actually it was the course of corporate social responsibility was an elective one. Then the second is the main test, the main section, which gives the main knowledge, and which is the longest, then knowledge control and referral system, which is still being developed. So the first one, the section 1, introduction of preliminary acquaintance with the subjects. This section allows us to solve the following tasks: to motivate the students to take the course, to rate their interest, to get students ready for the independent use of multimedia manuals and internet resources. And the main elements of this book is the course presentation and the course program. The next section is theoretical knowledge and practical tasks. which has the following contents. It has multimedia applications. It contains interactive fragments, practical tasks for every topic, questions for self-control on every topic, and questions for final control. So questions for self-control can be fulfilled several times. Actually, we don't limit the amount of attempts for the students, but the last control, final control, of course, is only one attempt. For the purpose of this experiment, we used the texts on the topic relevant to the course corporate social responsibility, namely stakeholders analysis, social capital, sustainable development. During our course of the English for special purposes, certain exercises are presented in the learning management system Moodle. The course program stipulates the study of the case on corporate social responsibility. It's a team project. And as a part of individual tasks, the students are supposed to register for an online relevant course, so they can use among the huge amounts of different online courses provided by the leading universities of Ukraine and the world, and get also some information there. The next element of the section is lectures on the course corporate social responsibility, and these lectures are presented in study management, the learning management system Moodle, in both languages, in Ukrainian and in English. So such approach pursues several goals. First, it promotes the building of skills of using the English language as an instrument for information search. It gets the students acquainted with different topics. It gets them ready to listen to lectures in the English language. And this bilingualism in the lecture notes gets the development in hearing seminars and round tables that follow the lectures. Most of these seminars are of such character, and again, the topic of these round tables and seminars actually relates to topics that are provided during the course of English for professional purposes. The next section is knowledge control. The tasks to be solved there is to reveal the knowledge, of course. First of all, the initial level of the knowledge, to detect individual abilities of the knowledge acquisition, to individualize the learning and control processes, and to efficiently manage the learning process. The advantages of control, of knowledge control using ICT, you have some advantages that are enumerated there. First of all, the teacher gets more time for developing the course. Then it definitely, what most of the students know, it eliminates the subjective factors and creates the equal opportunities for all the participants of the process, and students were alike. It allows to increase the individualization in the learning process, definitely, because as I have said, for example, the students have opportunity to attempt to pass the tests as many times as they need to, and take more time if they need, and to return to some tests, the self-check tests. And the last one, the improvement of psychological situation, because it's, of course, it relieves a great deal of stress last section is the referral system. We're still developing it, but pretty much it allows us to solve the following tasks: to facilitate the content acquisition, to increase the interest of the subject, to allow the students to acquire the information culture and to teach them how to use the different references and to join the world information community, which is not the last important. So, the level of this bar chart shows us basically before and after the experiment, the blue one is before the experiment and after the experiment. We took the mean average of all the grades that were obtained by the students, and you see the first two groups, EG1 and EG2, these are the groups that participated in the variant 1 of the experiment with more information communication technologies included in the experiment, and AG3 and AG4, this was variant B with less, actually less information technologies included. But still, the level increased in all four cases, but we see that in first two groups it's a little bit higher than group 3 and group 4. Here we have the results of the sample, or the sample mean values, the one that you have already seen, and the sample values of distortion, which we counted to verify the results of our experiment. So, the analysis and comparison with the results of contemporary researchers in the field of integrated learning allowed us to make some conclusions. First of all, it's a synergy effect. The effect which gives us the opportunity to combine the effective acquisition of professional information on the one hand and the development of professional and foreign language skills on the other hand. And all this all together, of course, ensures building the professional competence as a whole. This is on the good side. What is on the bad side? On the bad side, I didn't include it, but still, we have an open-ended questions or answers of the students. And these questions revealed some negative factors that would decrease the efficiency of the teaching process. Some students, for example, consider the instructions delivered in Moodle are inefficient and require more personal instructions. Whether it is psychological or maybe it is just lack of information on culture, we still don't know, but there are some students which really come to the consultations and ask to explain them once again, although they have read it several times. And when you start talking to these students, you see that they pretty much understand everything, but they want to be sure, they don't want to use this as an intermediary between them and the teacher. Some of the students feel that using of the internet during classes distracts them from the topic, so they start from looking up on the internet or some useful information or some information that was in their task, and then end up in Facebook or some social network or writing in Bible. So it really distracts some of the students. The ambiguous opinion provided by the students requires further interpretation and more profound
What questions do you have?
You're talking about two courses. It's your courses. You give the lecture.
Not necessarily mine. I developed the corporate social responsibility, but since we have two groups and one is specific on the university, so the corporate social responsibility is lectured by me and one professor, and the English for professional purposes by other.
Do you use some feedback form from students for self-assessment?
Yeah, definitely. I read you some of the questions that they answered, that they are not happy with the intermediaries, they are not happy with the instructions. Some of them feel that they are distracted by opportunity to go and check on Facebook their accounts or to write to Kyiv. So yeah, we do.
Else question. You described a pedagogical system, functionality of this system. To build the model, you should set requirements for it. What requirements for your pedagogical system you set?
Our main task, we're still thinking of some, like more academician, maybe academic requirements, but our task of the experiment now was to increase the level of foreign language competence, first of all.
This main requirement.
This is the main requirement, right, because it's only the second-year students, and we have a lot of students that don't really understand the necessity and all the benefits of the English language, of using the foreign language in general. So that's why we use actually corporate social responsibility this course, because it's very difficult to find a lot of material for this course in Ukrainian segment of the internet. So, and when we show how many opportunities they and the managers can use different instruments that they can use during this course, they start really thinking that English is not just for English. English is just as an instrument. So this is our main requirement. But, it's still difficult now to evaluate it somehow in figures. So we counted these figures, we were really happy that they increased, but I understand that it's not the main requirement, so we have to still to work.
Thank you. Else questions? Let us thank the speaker.
Thank you.
Next report, identification of IT sector stockholders requirements to master program in information system in Lviv region. Authors: Igor Alexeyev, Ivan Nizonin, Victoria Харчук, Roman Tkachenko, and Anastasia Doroshenko. Lviv Technical National University. Speaker, Ivan Nizonin. Please.
Dear colleagues, my name is Ivan. I am an assistant professor at Lviv Polytechnic National University. I would like to show you the results of our research, identification of IT sector stakeholders requirements to master program in information system in Lviv region. My presentation consists of the following parts. Firstly, I will describe the master's project which supported this study. Then I will present the methodology that we use for I will show you the results of our work. Today, one of the key trends in the development of modern enterprises is the introduction of effective information management systems that allows monitoring and optimization of all stages of company product value chain. Implementation of modern information system at Ukrainian enterprises requires specialists with some specific competencies that are not currently on the market. These competencies include project management skills for the implementation of information system, the ability to carry out strategic analysis and planning of information system, risk management, creative approach to solving problems associated with the implementation of information system, and each others. Training of specialists with such competencies will enable the first to gain a competitive advantage by obtaining the knowledge and skills that are not sufficiently represented at the labor market of Ukraine. In our research, we are using a tuning approach to building educational programs. The first step in this process, according to the harmonization model, which was developed by the tuning project, is good consultation with stakeholders. This work supported by the Master's project. It is the Erasmus Plus project. The main goal of this project is to improve master program in information system according to the needs of modern society. In this slide, you can see the list of the partners, Ukrainian and European partners, which take part in this project. The project objectives you can see in the slide. The main of them for this work is first and second, improving of master program in information system according to the needs of global labor market, and updating the current curricula in information system. Exactly for these objectives, we begin to work with stakeholders. We try to identify the most demanded competencies for future masters in information system. In our case, we work with employees and graduates. We choose the 6 IT company in the region because they are most popular as employee for our graduates. There are 3 of them is a big company, more than 400 people, and 3 of them is a small company, less than 100 people. A series of meetings was organized with each individual company. All members of this meeting worked on the choice of competencies. The Master's project team prepared a questionnaire for employees, which contained 9 competencies areas with subclasses based on MC's 2016. As an example, you can see in the table 1 the subclasses for the area enterprise architecture. It's a questionnaire for employees. Our colleagues from Kyiv Polytechnic University developed a questionnaire for graduates based on the recommendation of the Italian Association for Informatics and Automatic Calculation. You can see this area in the first table. As an example, you can see sub-area for the area research and academic analytical competencies in the table 2. Results. Histogram of consolidated competencies for large and small companies of Kyiv region, as well as their average value, is shown on the slide. As can be seen from the slide, from this feature, the needs of both large and small companies, green and yellow line, are in most cases have a this slide, you can see the comparison of the result of online survey for graduates of IT specialty in Kyiv. It's a blue line, and in Kherson region, it's a yellow line. As can be seen from this feature, the needs of to this region are very different. Such differences is also found for other regions. This can be explained by the characteristic of each regions, in particular labor market demand, or the graduation in university, technical, economics, and so on. That is why the consortium of the project made the following decision. The project participants collected all results and have developed 8 core courses which will be used by all participants. In this slide you can see these courses. Other program courses or elective courses can be developed according to the requirements of some specific region or some university. Based on that, we developed and approved our new curriculum in information system in Kyiv Polytechnic National University. The first admission of students to this program will take place in autumn this year. One of the main stages of the developing curriculum process, in accordance with the organization model, which was developed by Tuning Project, is the assessment using first feedback form and second prediction. The assessment based on the prediction is possible with coordinate cooperation with the IT industry. This is another important reason why we should collaborate with IT engineers. The previous assessment, which based on feedback form for the piloting of one of the core courses, you can see in the slide. We will take these results into consideration for the further teaching process. Conclusion you can see in the slide. Thank you for your attention.
What questions we have?
Do you have any courses which, beside of that, which are mandatory from state regulation or ministry regulation, and what is the how much courses usually per semester have your student in this program?
As you know, based on the new law of education, all university has autonomy. Then a ministry don't prepare a list of courses that will need to be included in some programs. We have this for 8 core courses and have I don't remember 3 or 4 courses which is common based on the requirements of our university. It's information management and marketing, civil security, I don't remember others. How many courses in one semester is the second question?
I mean, it's 12 courses per semester, so it's like every day they have 2 or 3 lectures. Yeah?
This program is a 2 years program. We have 120 credits, and in 1 year we have half of that. But in the second year we have many practice work and students prepare their diplomas.
Okay, thank you.
Those questions? One more question. You gave comparative analysis of requirements in different regions of Ukraine. And you said common part and differences of these requirements. question: what and how to take into account differences in developing common and general curriculum?
I haven't the results of all region, but I know that there are many differences for some specific region. Therefore, the Masters Consortium decided to develop only 8 core courses, and each university can develop some courses which are required by their regions, by their employees. It's good, for my opinion, it's a good practice because it's some universal model, but he has some agile approach.
And in variable part of curriculum, we may take into account specific region.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Maybe.
Really, that was an interesting comparison of requirements of different regions. Did you compare the requirements with foreign stakeholders? Do they differ much or not?
No, we didn't have such opportunities to work with foreign stakeholders. Only our, but these 6 IT companies of the Kyiv region work with other countries. They developed some system for, not for Ukraine, but for other countries. And that is why I think that our result is actual, because developers know the new technologies, new tools, new method that used in abroad.
I see. Maybe international companies represented among the stakeholders.
Yes.
And the stakeholders were mostly the companies, but also the universities.
In our case, we work only IT companies because it's our potential employees for our graduates. But I know that in other regions, master's teams work with another enterprises which have some automated control departments.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let us thank the speaker. The program of our session, ICT in Education, is over. Thank you very much for the invitation. I close the session.
Great that this conference for us, for organizing committee for Kyiv University, will be much more difficult than the previous two. Yes, there were some pleasant things with Wi-Fi, with rooms, with maybe partly equipment, but probably our team became more mature. The 10 hours of 3 days ran very quickly, and I'm ready to have more 2 days of the conference, but unfortunately we have the final session now. I would like to say to thank all of you for your participation, for your interest, for your activity during the conference. Thank you very much. And I would like to ask the program committee chair to announce new important information and officially to close the conference. Please.
Thanks, Mikhail. It was a very nice introduction. I'm happy to say that the conference looked like very nice and successful event for all of you, as far as you're sitting here. I'm sorry to say that it is the 17th of May already. Well, yeah, it's not yet the 4th of July, but I can offer you a sort of a temporal independence from ICTERI for some period of time. You will get a new call for papers for the next instance, not later than in October, and I believe that many of you will consider to submit their latest research as papers to our conference, just to feel yourself as members of the sustained and growing community, which is interesting in professionally. So, just not to keep this intrigue anymore, I would like to tell you also, as a member of the steering committee that has been decided, that ICTERI 2019, the Jubilee 15th issue of this conference, will take place at Kherson State University on the dates given, and the announcements will soon appear on the renewed website. The link is also given down the side. So, I wish you good luck. I wish you safe trips back homes, and very many returns of that day and good memory of those days. I believe many of you have. So, cheers and welcome back in a year to Kherson.
Coffee break.
Yeah, let's party now. The official part has ended, so we will not do any other official declarations or statements. Yeah, we will not present. That was the last slide of ICTERI in 2018. Officially. If you want some unofficial slides, no problem. But it's a coffee break.
Thank you very much.
Because Monday is a holiday. Huh?
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So a taxi is waiting if you like to
great.
go in any time.
Yeah, so I will go now. So it was very nice. Thank you very much for all. Now he has thousands of photos. Victoria, bye-bye. See you again next year at the latest. Bye-bye. So you have work next year? Thank you very much. Thank you for your reform. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Will you make a Dropbox? Okay. Okay. Bye-bye. It was nice to meet you. Perhaps we can read some. Yeah, sure.
So you are full contact. You're on your way to the station trip back. I believe so, yeah. Yeah. Bye-bye. Please let me know.
Yeah? Bye-bye.